All right, welcome. It is week 4, lecture 1, which means after this week, we're officially halfway done with the MERN JavaScript stack. So hopefully you guys are feeling excited and ready for that. Just a little bit of housekeeping before we get going. We've got some discussion questions that are due by Sunday at 11:59 p.m. as always. And then we've got core assignments as well. If we look here at our sheet, we go to week 4. It looks like we've got quite a few assignments this week and 3 core assignments. You've got this Axios Pokemon API, routing practice, which what we're going to talk about today is routing, and then Faker API. Faker API is one we're going to start dealing with Express. This is a challenging one simply because the way that we're going to do it in the future is going to have a database associated, but we're going to rock with it, roll with it, see what we can do. But that's kind of your last one. And then you got some Postman plus Pokemon practice. We've already introduced Postman and Pokemon kind of got me confused. We've already introduced Postman, so you guys should be aware of that. But that is one of the practice assignments as well as the Pokemon API. Cool. Just wanted to remind you that next week is a discussion, or not discussion. It is a break week, meaning that you've got nothing due. There's no discussion questions due. There's no core assignments due. This is a great time if you're behind at all. This is a great time for you to catch up, just to make sure everything is good to go, and also to work ahead. Like I said, there's already lectures from previous cohorts available on the platform. So you guys feel free to work ahead. This is a great time to kind of catch up. But also my encouragement, take a little bit of a break. You guys have been going, you've been doing quite a bit. So, give yourself a little bit of rest. It's going to be better for you in the long run. After that, we move pretty quick. We go straight into week 5 where we learn about MongoDB and full stack MERN. So we really kind of start that in week 5. Then we're going to have an entire week, which is our week 6, where we are prepping for our belt exam. So we're going to learn, we're going to continue with this full stack portion. We're almost there. We have already learned kind of the front end portion. Once we learn Express tomorrow and Node, that's kind of completing our back end, our communication to our back end. And then we have MongoDB, which is our database. We're almost full stack. We're almost there. And then at the end of week 6, your first exam will open. Now, you do have to meet certain criteria. You have to have 90% of core assignments completed, which is 11. So I don't know if this is like 86% or something like that. But really, you just know you have to have 11 core assignments completed before you qualify for an exam. Once I give you an exam code, it'll be good for the duration of the cohort. So really until Tuesday, that'll be the last day to start it. So if you wanted to give it some time, that's fine. I would always encourage you, take it that week or that weekend if you can, if you have the ability, unless you work on the weekend, then I totally get it. But take it as soon as you can, because if there's any sort of failures or any sort of issues that you need, you can kind of get through that and we have some time, versus if you wait until Tuesday to take your first exam and you fail it, then you have to retake the entire course. So definitely make sure you do that. This idea of first retake opportunity, as soon as I grade your exams, there's not that many of you in class. So let's say 10 of you did it over the weekend. By Tuesday, I should have all of those done. As soon as, if you do have to take a retake, as soon as I grade it, I will send you, hey, here's your retake code. Here's a breakdown of what you missed. Here's your retake code. So this is just an idea, but really we don't hold it. I give you as ample time as possible to take it. As a reminder, you get up to 3 turns or 3 times. And I say up to 3 times for the exam, because if you wait until Tuesday to start your first one, that does not mean that you still get 2 more. You have up to 3 by Tuesday. So if you wait again and your first exam is taken on Tuesday itself, well, then that's really your only chance. So cool. Any questions on kind of what to expect next week and coming up these next couple weeks? Week 6 will be the end of our curriculum in regards of what is needed for the exams. You'll learn everything for that. Week 7 and 8, I usually do just kind of other ways to do things. And so we are dealing with functional based components, but there's class-based components as well. So we'll talk about that. We'll talk about async and await, fetch. We'll kind of do that compared to using something like Axios, just in case you do find yourself in a job with React and they do something a little bit different. If they've been using React for a while, they probably use class-based compared to functional-based components. And so we just teach you that. And then also teach you login and registration, dealing with JSON web tokens and authentication as well. So that's what we'll learn for this little portion of it. Are there any questions on this? Okay. I wanted to do just a class check-in and see how you guys are feeling. How are you feeling about the class? How are you feeling about the material? How are you feeling about myself as an instructor? Is there anything I can do? Garrett's out today. But is there anything I can do that can help you with your learning, help you with understanding more, just wanting to check in and also get a feel for how you're feeling about the material. So is there anything you guys can put it in the chat? You can come off mute, but anything I can do to help you guys or that would be of benefit to you as well? I know this is a small and quiet class. So I'm just trying to get a pulse of how things are going. So I see in the chat, so far so good. Material is challenging. Yeah, it is. It's a lot of material, but you guys have been crushing it. Anything I can do better as an instructor that I can help you with?
I think you're doing a great job, Will.
Oh, thank you, Joseph.
Yeah, you're welcome. I agree with, I believe it was Brittany. Yeah, sometimes the assignments can be challenging, especially the to-do list. So I'm still in the thick of that, admittedly.
Yeah.
But so far I feel like when I come to lecture, I feel prepared to take on the assignments, even if I still struggle at times. It's more along the lines of, oh gosh, where did I make that error? And like
Sure.
trying. So I guess if anything, tips and tricks on troubleshooting might be helpful.
Yeah. Yeah, that's great. Thank you for sharing that. And I also don't ask this so that, I'm not like pandering for like, you're doing great. Genuinely, if there's anything, like, hey, if you could do this a little bit more, I do try to do that, but I appreciate your kind words. Yeah, absolutely. We can kind of start looking at some errors. We're going to talk about one common error today. And so we'll kind of do that. But I think as we start building, we've had a lot of theory. It's a little bit of a weird breakout or a little bit of a weird kind of connection because we code a little bit and then we talk a little bit and then we code a little bit and we talk a little bit. But I think what'll be nice is these next couple of weeks, we're going to be coding a lot more. And like I said, in week 5, for those of you that just joined, what we're going to be doing is week 5, we're going to be finishing our material. So we're going to learn about MongoDB. This week, we are going to be talking about Express and Node. So our backend, we're going to start setting that up. Start dealing with MongoDB, and then week 5, we start our full stack MERN. So I think this is really going to be time where we start piecing everything together. Something Brittany and I were talking about in office hours that, understanding the individual things is easy or easier, not as difficult, but putting it all together, seeing the big picture, which is like I expressed kind of at the beginning of this course, MERN kind of does that. You have to learn all these nuancy things, and then you're like, how does this connect? And at the end, when you throw it all together, you're like, okay, but we have to get good at every individual piece, which kind of makes it challenging. So, but yeah, thanks, Joseph. I'll try to kind of problem solve. And I think as we code a little bit more, there'll be some more issues. And that's also a great time during office hour as well. That if you have a problem, bringing that in, because we kind of talked about like career stuff today in office hours. So, okay, awesome. Well, if you guys, cool. If you guys have anything, as always, like I said in week 1, please let me know if there's anything I can be doing to help your learning, if it's using more visualizations, if it's doing less theory, if it's less, kind of talking on tangents or not using ChatGPT or whatever. Let me know, because my goal, and you guys, bluntly, you guys are paying me to teach you. So I want to teach you the best that I can. And also I care about you guys actually learning this material. So. Okay. Anything else to add in there before I jump into the material? Okay, dope. If you have any questions, feel free to put them in chat. Like I said, Garrett's not here today, so it's just me. So if there is anything, feel free to raise your hand or come off mute, and I can stop. So if I don't catch anything in chat, but I'm moving on to something, feel free to ping me. We've talked about the review of this week and what we're expecting. And today we are talking all about routing. So we've talked about, and we've seen that we can create components, and we have this sort of app component, this app.jsx, that everything has been in there, right? All of our materials have been in app.jsx, or all of our components, I'm sorry. What we want to start doing, because that's not really reality, right? Facebook doesn't have everything always, every component on its homepage, right? You have to click into things. You have to click into Marketplace to get all the Marketplace stuff. You have to click into your friends to get all your friend stuff, the groups to get all the group stuff. And so what we want to start doing is creating some anatomy, some pathways within our application so that when our user wants to click or view something, they can do that. It's just not in such a way that, everything's there all the time. So we're going to do that. And at the beginning, I know it kind of sounds silly, but what we first want to do is we want to understand, what is routing and what is the anatomy of a URL. And I think anatomy of the URL is a great way to kind of go. You do not have to learn this. You do not have to like memorize this by any stretch of the imagination. It's just more so we're going to talk about the path, really. But this is what a URL is. And so anytime we go on to anything, really, you're going to have some sort of URL. And this anatomy breaks it down to where you have a protocol, which is HTTP. And if it's secure, then it's HTTPS. Then you have your subdomain, your domain, and your top level domain. So you guys have all seen this before. So you've seen like google.com or facebook.com, right? You guys kind of understand what a domain is. The main thing to talk about is this path. Now, what this path does is allows us, again, to dissect our code, dissect our application, so that way we can show users something unique or something specific anytime they do some sort of action. So if we are looking even up here, we see that I've got this protocol of HTTPS. I've got my subdomain of login, my domain of Coding Dojo, and my top level domain of .com. Great. Now, wherever I click on this application, wherever I click on this web app, that's all going to stay the same. That is going to stay static, right? The thing that changes is this pathway. So if I come here, right now it says M1466952, blah, 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 blah. Here, if I see, I click on something different, now I'm in React routing, well, these stayed the same, but now this last part changed. And by doing this, what this allows is whenever this goes to 80177, well, we're telling our application, I want you to show this data. I want you to show this material, the anatomy of a URL material. And when we click on the 80178, well, that's the next one, right? And so if we actually are looking at this domain, we can see a couple different things based on if I'm in React or if I'm in JavaScript. You can see that 146, we're just kind of thinking about it. That's really our MERN, part-time online program. The 6954 is this main sort of header, this section of learning. And if I change this, then that changes. Now that's 6948. And now I'm in the React section. And then lastly, this end part of my path is, well, which one am I clicked on? Therefore, what material am I showing? So that is really the anatomy of a URL. It is really dealing with the path. And all of this is us creating different, what we call routes. So you can sort of think about it like if you've got a map and somebody says, hey, how do I get to this cottage, right? The cottage of anatomy of a URL. You say, oh, you take this road and it will get you there. It's like, okay, great. And if they say, well, how do I get to the use navigate cottage? You say, oh, you take this road, right? We're kind of doing the same thing. We're saying, hey, computer, here's your path. And it's going to go to exactly what it, exactly the path we give it. And it's going to retrieve the material and it's going to show that there. Okay. Any questions on anatomy of a URL, of URLs at all? Cool. Okay. So in order for us to actually create these routes, create these roads for our application to actually have, right, and us to be able to alter the components or the way that we view components, we need to we need to bring in an additional tool, and that's going to be called React Router DOM. So what we're going to do is I'm going to CD into routes or routing, and I still haven't run npm I. So I'm going to do that. So I'm going to install. I've already created the V application. That's all I've done. So we'll run npm I. And then now what I need to run, we don't need Axios for this, but this is when you would also run Axios or install Axios, is I'm going to say npm install react router DOM. So you can say npm install react router DOM. And if I wanted Axios, I could just do space Axios and it'll actually do both. So I'll just do that just to show you. Cool. So if I come to my code and I see in my routing, I have my package JSON, we should see React Router DOM and we see Axios. So yeah, if you, as we're starting to install more things, we're going to install like bcrypt and other tools. You can just do a space. So we say npm install, and then the package you want to do, space the package you want to install, space the package you want to install, etc., etc., etc. Cool. Great. So let's run npm run dev. Cool. So now we see I've got this local host 5173. Oops. Thing. Cool. I just have my normal project. There's a couple different things that we need to do in order for us to start handling routing. So we installed this package, and the first thing is we need to bring in this browser router. Now, what this does is it basically identifies, hey, here are some routes. Here's what I'm going to do. And so that way my application knows that within this section, I'm basically covering this section and saying I need access to the React Router DOM materials. So if we run into our app, let's go straight into our app and then we'll build it out even more. Let's get rid of some of this junk. Cool. And then we'll get rid of this. Cool. Now what I want to say is browser router. And it needs a closing browser router. From here. Oops, it's at the beginning. Sorry. Cool. Now, this is, again, allows us to actually do some routes. But in order for me to use it, I really need to import that from React Router DOM. So here, I'm going to say import, and I'm going to say browser router. I'm also going to import routes and route from React Router DOM. We're going to see what these all mean here in just a bit. But for right now, this is kind of what we're doing. Cool. So I bring in all that information. This says, okay, now I have access to this material at React Router DOM. In order for me to actually, in order for me to actually set a route. So we're going to create our first route and we're going to do this. We're going to say routes. And then I need to close that. And everything within routes, let me tab it over. Everything within routes is going to be the actual routes that my application looks for. So anytime I am navigating to something or I'm clicking on something, which we're going to get to use navigating link here in a bit, but it's going to say, cool, anytime there's a search up here for / something, it's going to go check and say, what do you want me to do? Right? We're now giving it structure instead of just saying, I want you to load every single application or every single component upon, mounting. It's saying, cool, I have this URL. What do you need me to bring in? So we're just going to create, at the beginning, we're just going to create a home path. So I have my browser router, and here's my list of routes. So you just have one browser router always, and one routes. And here I have a route that's going to be a path. And let's just let's just do this. Okay. So let's break down exactly what's happening. Within my browser router, I've got this routes again, which is my list of routes. And then I have my first route. What this slash says is that is just kind of the base route. So sometimes it's called the landing page or the base route, where this is implied whether I do a slash or not. It's just really localhost 5173. And we can see right here, I'm already getting an error. So we were talking about errors. Let's talk about it. Let's look and read this error here. So Vita is telling us expression expected. It's giving me an underline here. And it's saying syntax error. Now, I don't know what happened. Right. Okay. Usually what happens is when it gives me an underline here, it's saying prior to this point, or at this point where my route is supposed to be done, there's an error in here. So if I was looking at this, I would say, okay, something is wrong with my route. And that is true. It's just we haven't built it yet. So when I'm dealing with my route, I'm saying when my path is, and then this case, it is a slash. But let's say when it's home. Perfect. When it's home, when I say 51/73/home, I want it to do something. Well, what I want it to do is I want it to bring up a specific component that we're going to call home. So let's go build that. Let's go build that. I'm going to come here. I'm going to say components. And then in that, I'm going to create a home.jsx. And then RAFCE. And then we'll just call this, this is fine. Cool. So now I have this home.jsx. The way my browser router works is, and I'm sorry for all these squigglies, eventually it will, it'll work. But I have this home, then I say what component I want it to bring up. And so in this case, I'm going to bring up my home component, and I call it the same way that I would a normal component. And let's just do a route. That will say it's self-closing. Perfect. And we're going to call this index. And I'll explain what this means here in a second. And then we'll call this landing page. Cool. Perfect. So what this doesn't like is that my browser router only has one child. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to say h1 hello world, or routing practice. That makes more sense. Ooh, it still does not like it. Okay. So what it didn't like right there, the reason that was giving me an issue, there was a linter issue. So it doesn't mean that my code doesn't work. But remember how we had that fragment and that was my parent? What it was saying is because my fragment had just one child, which is the browser router, and everything was in it, then it sort of feels redundant. So if I would have done this and gone up here, that should get rid of it, because now I have two children, right? I have my H1 and I've got my browser routing. So that's what that error was. Okay. So now if I say this guy right here, it's bringing up home. And if I say index, this should bring up landing page. Perfect. Now let's go see what's happening. What this route does, let's kind of break these down here. This is saying when this route, right, when my application gets this route, well, what do I want it to do? I want it to, it gives me my path. And so when the route is /home, it's going to look for, it's going to find this and say, oh, yep, I found it. I've got /home. I found it. What do you want me to do? I want you to build, or I want you to bring up this element, this element, which is our component of home. Now for this one, when we say index, what index means is it's the same thing as if I said path equals quotation /, just meaning kind of your first thing. So if your base like 5173, this is your index. So it's saying, hey, at the very beginning, this is what I want you to bring in. I want you to bring in this. So we're able to do that. Now, can anybody see what is my error? Because right now it should work. Can I see my error? This is not working.
Do you need to like make your landing page and your home components and then import them?
The second part I think is you're exactly right. I've made them before, right? I've made them here, but it's saying landing page is not defined, or landing page is not defined. Yeah. So if I say home, does that have the same issue? Yeah, it says, it says landing page is not defined. So what the issue is just like Brittany said, here I am calling landing page component and I'm calling the home component, but remember it acts similar to how we first had it. So I have to bring those in from the top. Import home from components home and import landing page from components landing page. So now I get this no errors. I get this routing practice, and that's going to always show because I put it outside of my browser router. So no matter what, when this app JSX is mounted here, right, then it's always going to show. And then in this case, I am seeing home. So it's going, oh, cool. I have /home. Let's go get the component of home. So it goes here and then it grabs this information. If I just say this, I get landing page. So now based off of what I take in up here, I can change what component or what is being viewed. We're going to start doing this a lot because we want, again, we want some functionality to our web application. So if we're editing a form, for creating stuff like that, we're going to have different pages. Though we're going to call them different pages. Remember, it's just React taking one component and saying, oh, okay, for this pathway, I want it just to say home. So it just takes that component of landing page and replaces it with the component of home. So it's still a single page application. So if I say pages, it still is a single page application. It's just deciding which components it wants to show. Okay. Any questions on that at the moment? Just put a 1 in the chat if this makes sense. Put a 0 if it does not. Okay. Perfect. Great. Now let's pretend that we want to basically make something like this, or, you know, kind of looking at this, we can see we have a bunch of different stuff that's, again, static, right? I've got this coding dojo that if I click on it, it's going to go there. If I say home, learn, contact, all of these are like a nav bar or some links. So let's go build that out, because now that we can click on it, click on things, and we can redirect, we want to be able to navigate my application. Can anybody remember in HTML, what element do we use to click and sort of redirect to somewhere different, especially like a different route? Anybody remember?
Is it like the anchor tag?
Yeah, exactly, Brittany. We use an anchor tag. Unfortunately, in React, we can't do that. So what we have to do is we use a different one. So I'm going to say nav.jsx. And so let's actually create a nav bar that we'll call home and landing page. Great. And so in this, I want to say, yeah, maybe I'll say h1 nav bar. And then what I'm going to want to do is I want to be able to grab some information, or I want to be able to click in and out and say, if I want to go between home and landing page, I want to be able to do that. And so what we do instead of an A tag is we have to use this term called link. Oops. Link. And what link does is it acts just like an A tag, but it's in React. So anything in between the link is what you visually see. So if I say something like landing page, great. Maybe I have another one. Did I say home? Perfect. Maybe I put like a BR between them. Perfect. Okay. So I've got that. And if I go look at this, let's go and bring this in. Now I want this on the, I want to be able to have this persistently, right? So I want it to always be showing. So instead of doing this, let's go ahead and just call this nav bar here. Perfect. And I make sure it imports nav from components nav. So now if I come to my actual application /home, let's see my error. Link is not defined. So what we have to do with link is it is a product of our React Router DOM. And so I just need to say import link from React Router DOM. And so now should work okay. Cannot do structure base name. Oh. So the issue that we're getting is a link says, okay, if this shows up, where do you want me to take it? In the same way that an A tag has an href, right? And so what I need to do is within my actual link portion, I need to put this little attribute called to equals, and then I just give it the route that I want to take it to. So for home, this is landing page, sorry. So I just have this slash, and that again is just the base root. And then here I say to equals curly bracket, and I'm gonna say home. So my error that I was getting, so I'm not gonna do it here. Is it saying, hey, I cannot destructure base name? It's saying with link, it's null. So you're not giving me a place. I can't show because if I hover over, right, it has to break it down and has to know where it's going. Because in the same way that here, if I hover over something in the bottom left, it gives me what route is it going to if I click on that, right? It needs to understand that information. So because I left this blank and I didn't have this to, it's saying, I don't know where to take this. So I can't destructure this. I can't break this down. So that's what was happening right there. But now if I come here and I refresh, I get the same error. Cannot destructure property base name. Let me see. Go to my app.jsx and see. See if I don't do this. So here's what I would do if I were you and I get into this. I would say, okay, let's identify where is this error? Is it in my nav component? Is it in my other component? Okay, so now it's working, which means that it's in my nav component, which means it doesn't like something within my nav component. So let's head there. Const nav. Let's try that. Turn. Export nav. Nav. Nav.jsx. Still getting that error. Anybody have any ideas? What I would do is I would come here. Omar, no, the BR is not necessary. It just breaks it down. Oh. Duh. I said, this is so annoying. I literally said today with Joseph, I'm going to show you an error that always happens. And then I did the error and I didn't show you. So here's what happened. We're wrapping everything in browser router, right? But my nav component is trying to use things from React Router DOM. So browser router allows me to utilize React Router DOM. And so because my nav is using link, which comes from that, and that's outside of my browser router, it's giving me an issue. If I say something like this, and let's just do my H1 called routing like this, just to make that ugly yellow go away. Cool. If I come here, I get no errors. So the issue was link. It's so funny. I literally said, I'm going to show you this error. And then I did the error and I didn't even see it. Link right here comes from React Router DOM. It needs to be wrapped in browser router in order for me to access that material. So in order for it to run and utilize that information, it has to be wrapped in browser router. That was the error. That was the issue. Another way you can do it, oops, not that one, is in the main JSX, if you wanted to do browser router to kind of prevent that error, if you wanted to say browser router, and then finish that, you could do that, and then you wouldn't have to do it. It's another way to kind of do it. Still works. If we inspect, there's no, oh, there is an error. Oh yeah, that was an earlier error, I think. Yeah, it's because I had two browser routers inside one another. So that's the second option. If you wanted to do that to kind of prevent that error, you can. Now that might actually slow down your stuff because everything's going through browser router. But you can put it in your main JSX as well. This is the only time you'll touch anything in your main JSX. But you could put it like that, and then that would prevent that error that we just had. And then anytime in your app JSX, you just have to say routes and route. Cool. Does that make sense? Does that error make sense? Did it make sense how we fixed that? And what we did to fix that? Cool. Joseph, I'm not going to say that this is on you, but I've had so many errors today. Right after you asked for more errors. So I'm not saying, I'm just saying.
Karma.
No, it's funny. I laugh like the one time. That's pretty funny. Not one time I make error, I make errors all the time, but okay. Great. Any questions on this so far? Anything we're dealing with so far? Cool. Well, sometimes we need to be able to bring information in and be able to grab that information. So in the same way that when I hover over this, and this has if you look at my bottom left, I can't, that guy right there, is it has that information. And so what this is doing is anytime we click on this link, we're going to that route, and then we're able to grab that information. And then we basically go to our database, and this all happens very quickly, and says, okay, grab me the material that is for this route, right? Or this piece of information. So we need to be able to grab stuff from our actual URL. And so in doing that, I'm going to skip use navigate for right now, and then we're going to get to that here in a bit. Is we're going to use a tool called use params. Use params is going to be great for us grabbing its parameters, or you can sort of think about it like variables from our actual route and being able to handle that. So let's go ahead and do that. Let's go into my app.jsx and let's create another route. That's going to have a path. It's going to be self-closing. It's going to have a path. And so what we're going to do is in our path, we're instead of just doing, we're going to call this dynamic, just so we can show that it's dynamic. Actually, no, let's do it kind of normal. So what we can do is, let's say that I want to show a word. I want to grab a word from my route and I want to be able to show it. Say the word is blank. If I know that I'm going to have a piece of information that I am grabbing from my route, at the portion where I want to grab it, I put a colon and then I type some sort of you think about this as like a variable. It's really important to know what this is. If this was unicorn, it could be cupcake, it could be anything you wanted, right? Could be anything you wanted at all. Cool. So let's say I was going to get word. And so let's go ahead in my components and create like a word JSX. And then I'm going to type RFCE and I just type your word is cool. So if I go back to my app and I say that my element is my equals my word. Oh goodness. Great. Now I haven't brought that in yet. And I need to put that, I need to wrap that in these guys. Cool. So I need to import this. I've learned my lesson. Import word from components. Great. So now if I'm looking at this, if I type any /word or any word, it's just gonna be looking for a word. It's going to bring up this specific component. Now, let's pretend that I wanted to grab that information from the route and actually use it. Well, I can do that. So if I go to my word, I have this kind of set up just like normal. I want to use this use params. So I can say import use params from React Router DOM. All of this comes from React Router DOM. Perfect. And then what I can do is I can, in my actual component itself, I can destructure these parameters, or this parameter, if you will. So I can say const word equals use params. Now, this is really, really, really important. Is this word, and it's hard because I say word. This value here must equal this value here. They must be the same. So if you call this some word, then in this needs to be called some word, because what use params is going to give me is a key value pair of the parameters being passed in my URL. And so because right now I just have this colon, it's going to give me one key value pair. If I had slash, something else, like if I have slash, oops. Color, it's going to give me a key value pair of 2 values, right? So I need to make sure that this word or this value matches whatever I'm destructuring from use params, because use params is going to give me a key value pair from that. And so the destructuring needs to match the key, right? And so what I can say is your word is, and then just like I would, there's a couple ways I can kind of do that, but I can come in and I can just say word, right? I could put this in state if I wanted to. I don't need to, but I could. But your word is what? Word. So now if I come and refresh, I have no issues. If I say slash unicorn, I get your word is unicorn. If I say slash cupcake, you can see that it's now dynamic. No matter what I type in at the top, my component is able to grab that information and render it in my component here. Now, what happens? Now, okay, I'm going to stop there. Are there any questions? And I'm going to show you kind of an error that we can get into if we need. Any questions on this? I just am using use params, which I have to bring in at the top, and it allows me to get any parameters from my route that I set here. Now, what do you think would happen if I did this? Anybody have any ideas? Any guesses? If I refresh, your word is cupcake, and if I come here as home, we still get home. One thing to note is sometimes this actually isn't how I thought it would react. Sometimes it goes top to bottom. And so we have to be aware of if I am just saying that this is a slash in some word, right? Well, home is technically just some word. And so if we're going to deal with some dynamic routing, we need to make sure, usually my rule of thumb is I just put it at the bottom. I put it at the kind of at the lower. So that way, if it does go top to bottom, then it's going to get my actual static ones. And then at the end, if it's a word that I don't recognize as a static page, then it's going to pull that up, if that makes sense.
Is the use of single quotes or double quotes going to affect that at all or no?
It will not. Nope. Say okay. Okay. Any other questions on this? We got 13 minutes. We can talk about use navigate if we wanted. And like I said, we could have like another, let's say color. And though my element just says word, it's okay. Where I could do fun things, where I can jump in and I can say your word is word and your color is, and I say color. But if I do that, if I'm going to have that second value, I need to make sure that I destructure that. So now I have access to it. Okay, cool. Now I can say color. You can even go as far as like, let's say that this was all in like an H2. Or you can have fun stuff where you can say like style equals, right? And then you say background is color, ground is color. And so now if I do this and I say, let's say, I say something along the lines of like unicorn / pink. Now it says your word is unicorn and your color is pink. So you can grab that information and kind of do with it whatever you want. Cool. The last thing I want to show you, is this idea of use navigate. Now this is what we're going to do. You're going to use this a lot when we deal with forms. So we're going to build a form real quick. So that way, once we grab some information, we want to take it and we want to navigate to and send some information with it. So here let's go ahead and create a form. So let's say form.jsx. Perfect. Already exit you. That's great. I am gonna bring in use state. So I need access to the information. Perfect. Cool. Now let's just build out a simple form. So we're gonna call this form. That's too much. We just want word and color. So I thought it would build my form for me. Nope. Okay. Sorry. Just trying to be lazy. I was hoping that it would build my form for me. Sometimes you can do that. Okay. So I've got a form. I'm going to just have a div. And then label. So I'm gonna say word. And then I have an input of type text. Perfect. Cool. And let's go ahead and do the same for color. Okay, cool. And then I just need a submit button. I don't care too much about styling or what it's going to look like. It's going to be hideous, but alas, here we are. Okay. So I've got this. I've got my form. How do we grab the information from a form? This is kind of going back to week 2/week 1. If I have this information, I want to update and I want to use state to do that. How would I capture the information being typed? What's a way that I could do that? Yeah, exactly, Brittany. I could use an on change, right? Where do I put my on change?
Does it go in the input for each?
It does. It does. So I can say on change. And so because this is so easy, like it's just a simple thing, we're just going to say E. And then we're going to need some state. So first off, I'm going to say const word set word and const color set color. And so here on change, I'm going to run set word. I'm going to pass it my e dot target dot value. And just as a recap, what this is doing is this is changing, and every time there's an on-change event that's happening, we're taking the value from that event and we're running set word, so that way this state of word gets updated. We're gonna do the same thing for color. So we're gonna say on change. I've already got my color, so I'm gonna say E, and because it's only one value, I don't need to put it in the parentheses. If there's multiple, I would. Set color. And it's going to be, again, e.target value. Again, if I wanted to abstract this and put it up top or put it all in one, I could kind of handle it the same way too. Put it all in like one piece of state, like one object, I could do that. But for right now, it's super simple. Okay. We've got this form, we got submit button, we're capturing the values. So now what I need is I just need a submit handler, right? That takes a event. What I do is I prevent default. And then for right now, I'm not going to console log, but I do need a on submit for my H1 or for my, not my H1, sorry, for my actual form itself. It's going to be handle submits. Perfect. So just recapping, what this is doing is I've got a form, got two inputs, tracking the information via this, and I'm handling my submit. I get my event. I prevent default, meaning I don't want it to refresh. I want it to keep my information. And so now what I can do is I can navigate. Let's say that once I fill out this form, I want it to go to this word component and have the information that my form gave me. Well, I can do that, but I have to bring in some tools. I have to bring in from, again, as you guessed it, React Router DOM. I'm going to say import navigate from React Router DOM. Oops, it's not navigate. Sorry, it's use navigate from React Router DOM. Then what I need to do in order for me to use this is I need to instantiate it and say const navigate is use navigate. Now this could be anything you want. Let's keep it at navigate. But you're just creating a variable and you're saying its value is instantiating this class. So what I will do if I want to navigate, I will say navigate, and I want to grab that information of word and color. I can say navigate. You see that on the screen. Now, Joseph, you asked, do the double quotes and the single quotes matter on the routes? No, they don't. But when I'm using navigate and I'm grabbing some information, I have to do the backtick, and that's above the tab on the left side of your keyboard, because I want to inject my variables in there. And so I want to use that to where I can say word and color. So these have to be backticks if we're going to call values like this inside of this string. And this is just my path. So I'm saying I want to navigate to my path. And so what's going to happen is I'm going to fill out this form. We're going to keep track of that information. And then once I submit it, we're going to say, okay, navigate to this, and it's the information I just gave it. So it's going to go back here and it's going to say, cool, let me find that. I've got word and color. Where am I going? I'm going to word. Okay, great. I'm grabbing that information and then I'm showing it on my screen. So let's go see if this works. I have my form, but I did not do anything to call my form. So I need a route. My path is going to be, this means that anything else, like if it doesn't match any of these, you could do this /star. And that just means, hey, we don't have that. It's 404 not found. So this is kind of a good catch-all at the bottom. So I'm gonna keep that actually, just that way you guys could see it on the GitHub. But if I say path and I want it to equal /form element form, cool. So now if I come here and I say unicorn pink, I get another error because I did not bring in form from up here. Import form from components form. Cool. Okay, up. If I go home, that's great. I'm actually going to go into my nav just to make it easier. So I can say br link to form. Perfect. So now I can navigate. I can go to landing page, home, or I can go to my form where my word is cupcake. My color is blue. Now, when I submit this, it goes and it takes my information, says your word is cupcake and your color is blue. So we are using the information and we are navigating to this route with the information and state that we gave it. That then goes here, finds my route, says, okay, this word component goes to my component. I have some parameters for you. Great. And I'm able to show them on the screen. Okay. Was a lot. We went over a lot today. Are there any questions on, and just to reiterate, we talked about link. So basically replacing our A tags with link. We have this too. Talked all about routing, where we have to use browser router. So now that I'm not using it here, I can delete it. Again, where I'm putting it is right here, but you could put it the other way, works just fine. Within that, we have our list of routes. You can have components on the outside of it. Just make sure that if they use anything from React Router DOM, they have to be enclosed in the browser router. So either put it in main.jsx, which means everything is, so we're good, or If you're gonna have it in here, just make sure nav is under that. And then we have our specific routes. Index, again, is just our base route. So 5173/. Our pathways. And we can have dynamic pathways. So any word in any color can happen. And then this is our last one. Like if you didn't get any of them. So like if I said test 404 not found, because we don't have a route test, but we don't want our thing to break. Like if I didn't have this. Let's see what it would do. I look in my inspect. No routes matched. So our user would never know to inspect. So that's why we can put this guy. And then we at least say, hey, we don't have that information. I don't know where you're. 404 not found. Don't know what you're talking about. Okay, I'm gonna stop there. Are there any questions on what we talked about today? Does this make sense? Because I put a 1 in the chat or come off mute.
Sounds good.
Awesome. Awesome. Great. Well, tomorrow we will start talking about Express and our backend. But keep practicing this. And if you guys have any questions, as always, I am available. But that's all I've got. I hope you guys have a wonderful night and we will see you soon.